Chapter 4: The Age of Absolutism. Section 1: Extending Spanish Power. Charles V inherited not only the crown of Spain, but also the crown of the Austrian Habsburgs. The Habsburg Empire was discarded and diverse, so Charles V decided to give up his titles and enter a monastery in 1556. His 29-year-old son Philip inherited Spain, the Netherlands, southern Italy, and Spain's overseas empire. Philip was very hardworking and ambitious. He made Spain the most powerful state in Europe. He centralized royal power and reigned as an absolute monarch. Philip was sure he ruled by divine right, that God had given him his authority. He turned the Inquisition against Protestants. He fought Protestant rebels in the Netherlands. There were many riots against the Inquisition. Some largely Protestant provinces declared their independence from Spain. They called themselves Dutch Netherlands. Philip saw Queen Elizabeth I from England as his chief Protestant enemy. She encouraged English captain sea dogs to attack Spanish ships. The invasion failed, and with it, the plans of invading England ended. Spain's golden age happened between 1550 and 1650. During this time, many painters and writers developed in Spain. Section 2: France under Louis XIV. Henry IV inherited the French throne in 1589. Since he was a Protestant ruling Catholic land, he became Catholic. He issued the Edict of Nantes to protect Protestants. Henry IV laid the basis for royal absolutism. When Henry IV was killed, Louis XIII inherited the throne. Louis XIV believed that his power came from God and took the sun as the symbol of his absolute power. He thought he was the Sun King, who stood at the middle of the nation, just as the sun is in the middle of the solar system. During his reign, the French army became the strongest in Europe. The castle of Bercy was built countryside near Paris. It was really expensive and could house 1,000 people, from servants to nobles. Section 3: Triumph of Parliament in England. The Tudor dynasty ruled England for many years. The Tudors believed in divine right, but they also knew it was important to have a good relationship with the parliament. The battle lasted from 1642 to 1649. Although King Charles' army was very skilled, they lost against the Roundheads. After the Civil War, the parliament decided to execute King Charles I. Charles II was very welcomed in England and a very popular ruler. He strongly believed in absolute monarchy, but avoided making his father's mistakes with the parliament. Section 4: Rise of Austria and Prussia. The war began after two rebellious Protestant nobles threw two royal officials out the window in a Prague castle, which sparked a general revolt. The fighting was brutal and left towns abandoned and wrecked. Austria, Prussia, France, England, and Russia formed alliances to maintain the balance of power. They sometimes battled each other. The 7-Year War was fought in 4 continents. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris, which gave Britain a huge empire. Section 5: Absolute Monarchy in Russia. To impose his will, Peter became an absolute monarch. Peter wanted to strengthen the military and expand Russian borders. He brought all the Russian institutes under his control, including the Russian Orthodox Church. Peter left a great legacy and ended the long period of isolation from the world. Although he left many reforms, they died with him. Catherine was a German princess. She went to Russia to marry Peter III. When he was murdered, she got the Russian throne to herself. Catherine was an absolute monarch, and she was determined to expand Russia's borders. Poland was a great European power, but it was never able to centralize, so Catherine, Frederick, and Joseph decided to divide in 3 states. In Europe, 4 of the 5 powers were absolute monarchies, except for Britain, with its strong parliament. They fought each other to maintain the balance of power. New ideas were afloat, and changes would soon shatter the French monarchy. Chapter 5: The Enlightenment and the American Revolution. Section 1: Philosophy in the Age of Reason. Many scientific discoveries were made in this period of time, which led to a revolution in thinking, the Enlightenment. Through the use of reason, many natural laws were discovered and people were now able to solve social, political, and economic problems they hadn't been able to solve before. During the 1600s, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, both English thinkers, lived. Even though they lived through the same, they had very different perspectives of human behavior. Hobbes thought humans were naturally cruel and that, to achieve an orderly society, an absolute monarchy should be imposed. On the other hand, Locke was more optimistic. He believed people were moral and reasonable, and unlike Hobbes, he strongly rejected absolute monarchy. The philosophers, French thinkers of the Enlightenment, believed that reason could be used to reform government, law, and society. The most famous philosopher was Voltaire. He battled inequality, injustice, and superstition by writing. He was against slave trade and religious prejudice. His attacks defended the government and the Catholic Church, so he was imprisoned and forced to exile. Denis Diderot, another thinker, produced a 28-volume encyclopedia. The encyclopedia was translated into many languages. This helped spread Enlightenment ideas throughout the world. Rousseau thought people were good, naturally, but he felt it was corrupted by the evils of society. He thought the good of the community should be placed before individual interests, unlike most of the other thinkers. Thinkers known as physiocrats focused on economic reforms. They looked for laws to define a rational economic system. Some important physiocrats were Lucifer and Adam Smith. Section 2. Enlightenment Ideas. Educated people in Europe read Diderot's encyclopedia, accepted the new ideas, and saw the need to reform society. The government and church believed they needed to defend the old order, since they believed God established it. They started a war of censorship, banning access to new ideas and information. Writers, artists, and philosophers gathered at salons to discuss literature, arts, science, and philosophies. Thinkers tried to persuade rulers to adopt their ideas. Those rulers who did accept them became enlightened disposed. Some of the absolute rulers who accepted these ideas were Frederick the Great, Catherine the Great, and Joseph II. In the age of Louis XIII, courtly art and architecture was a style known as Baroque, which was heavy, colorful, and full of excitement. By the mid-1700s, artists developed a style known as Rococo, which was personal, elegant, and charming. New types of musical entertainment evolved. The music during this period was ordered and structured, well suited for the age of reason. Middle-class readers liked stories about their times, so novels depicting the lives of normal people with a twist of fiction were written. Section 3. Britain at mid-century. England's location helped it build a global empire, since its position was convenient for trade. Britain was usually on the winning side of conflicts. Even though it didn't have a strong standing army, it had a superior naval force, which protected its growing empire and trade. England expanded its inland territory by merging with Scotland. It also included Wales. The union brought economic advantages to both states. After the Glorious Revolution, two political parties, the Tories and the Whigs, the cabinet and the office of the Prime Minister appeared as part of the evolution of England's constitutional government. The head of the cabinet was the Prime Minister. He was also a leader of the majority party in the Parliament and the chief official of the British government. British government was an oligarchy in which only wealthy aristocrats were the ruling class and controlled most of the affairs. George III wanted to reassert his royal power. He wanted to end Whig domination, choose his own ministers, dissolve the cabinet, and make the parliament follow his will. But he was mentally ill, and this never happened. Section 4. Birth of the American Republic. Britain had 13 prosperous colonies along the west coast of North America. The war started after the Boston Massacre. The British won many battles, but the Americans won the war when the Congress declared their independence. The colonists formed an alliance with the French, and together they defeated the British. The Constitution created a federal republic where government power was divided into 3 branches. Citizens had rights that the government needed to protect, and the rulers were elected by voting. The Constitution of the United States has now been copied and amended by many countries.